starting this adventure at Bongate House in Appleby. Exceedingly motorbike friendly, and I'll just give you a quick look where you can park your bike safely. Look at that hard standing. But find out more about them in the guide. Now, Bongate House itself is right on the edge of Appleby, so it's beautifully located on what was once the ancient capital of Westmoreland. There was Westmoreland and Cumberland before Cumbria, and Appleby was the ancient capital. And we'll have a quick look in, because also this was famous, well, it is famous for Appleby Horse Fair, which is at the first weekend in June generally. Thousands of travellers come from all over Europe. And congregate here, hundreds of years old tradition. But Appleby's only a very small town, but as you go through, you go up this little bank, and at the top of it you've got Appleby Castle. When you arrive at Appleby Castle, you're already talking about being part of history that goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. There was a building here on this site even in Roman times, and what we're looking at now is the part of the property that is still occupied, and it is the oldest occupied building in Cumbria, dating back to the 1100s. Above me now we've got the round tower. This was built in the 1200s, and it juts out so that it can protect the gate as well as look over the moat. But one of the areas of particular interest is right on the top. You've got a medieval toilet. Appleby Castle, the oldest occupied building in Cumbria, and is synonymous with Lady Anne. And we're going to be talking more about her as we travel around, because she was also involved in a number of other castles around the Eden Valley. Eden Valley itself is absolutely, and I mean absolutely, steeped with history of castles and battle sites and Roman settlements. And there's also a building within the Eden Valley where the father of King Arthur was supposed to have resided, and we're going to be seeing that later on. So as we've come back over the bridge, we're going to turn left and head north, because one of the first things that we're going to go and do is have a look from over 800 metres up on the second highest fell on the Pennines. And that is what we're going to be riding on the top of. As it is shrouded in low cloud. That should be a bit of a giggle. The North Pennines, the spine of England. As you come out of Knock, you're going to turn right. You'll see the sign for the Christian Centre. That's the road to take. And things that you discover as you travel around. For example, the Christian Centre. I only found out recently there was a Christian centre here. And there it is there. The Knock Christian Centre. But we're climbing up towards the second highest hill or mountain, probably more of a hill than a mountain, on the North Pennines. And we can't see it today because of the clouds, but right up there you've got the little white golf ball that you'll see as you travel east or west on the A66, but you can also see it from the Middleton and Teesdale to Alston Road, and it's up here on Dun Fell. More known as a weather station, but believe it or not, it also helps out for air traffic control. It's also a radar station. Luckily, we can still see a lot from here. All of this in front of us now is the Eden Valley, and that's what we're going to be riding around. The hills in the far distance, they are the Howgill Fells. We can't see it today with this, but the footage I'm going to put in shortly will show you that right over there you can see the hills that surround Haweswater and Ullswater. Over there you've got Ullswater. As you come along you've got Kirby Thor. Over that way there you've got Appleby. Further down across over that way you've got Kirby Stephen. They're the Howgill Fells as you go around. And as you can see from the Yorkshire Dales, which is over that way, and eventually you end up Haweswater and Ullswater over in that direction there. So let's go and get dirty with some history. Anyhow, we now head south towards Penrith, and it's where the history starts to kick in. Well, watch out for this turning here. We're going to turn right here, which takes us above Penrith. And the reason we come this way is to see the view over Penrith, which is rather splendid. Now what you've got here, that is Penrith in the foreground there, but you couldn't see these when we were up at Dun Fell earlier. The Howgill Fells comes all the way around, but in that direction there, they're the hills that surround Ullswater and Haweswater. So Penrith really is the gateway, or one of the gateways, the other one is Kendal, the northern gateway to the Eden Valley. Because as you come off the M6 at junction 40, turn right or left depending upon which way you're heading, and you hit this beautiful area. And this is where we're going to be starting with the history and the heritage and the castles and the stories and the churches. So let's get started. Now, as we get into the centre, this is also where the train station is. But just up there, we've got Penrith Castle.
Penrith Castle was built at the end of the 14th century and played a key role in the defence of the Scottish border. Contrary to what many might be expected, the castle was not built at the highest point of the hill. That lies some 170 metres away. Its location was chosen because it was probably the site of an old Roman fort, the banks and ditches of which could be conveniently reused for their defensive function. It has long been thought that Penrith Castle was built by William Strickland, later Bishop of Carlisle, but there's no direct evidence for this.
And it's opposite the train station. And we're turning to head east, and eventually we're going down the old A6. Well, we're heading on the old A6 now. This was the route before the M6 was built. And the Eamont Bridge was a toll bridge. And just slightly back there, on the right as we come down, there's an old building which is the old toll bridge building. And some of the buildings down here, that one there, 1734, nearly 300 years ago. So they had to pay to cross the river. Now as we head down here, you've got a little roundabout. This is where we're going to turn right, and it's where our history lessons start. Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. In that field there, we're going to be exploring that in a minute, to do with King Arthur. But just a little bit further up, we're going to turn right down to here. That's where the big Millennium Stone is. And the Millennium Monument. But this area is synonymous with the Romans. And the first place that we're going to see is Burr Henge. So this henge, they reckon we're around about 5,000 years old. 5,000 years old. That's not just yesterday, is it? You see, they had sheep 5,000 years ago. So the edge of the pit, or the henge, is constructed from cobbles. And there's the Neolithic stone in the centre. But they reckon that this was a meeting place, I guess, for the tribes in the area, which they would be, wouldn't they then? Tribes. So we turn back round and retrace our steps a little bit. Because the next piece of history that we're going to visit is a hop, skip and jump from where we've just been to Burr Henge. And we're going to go in and have a look at Arthur's round table. Despite its name, this is a prehistoric monument and probably dates from the period 2000 to 1000. Now literally just over there is the Burr Henge, 3,000, 2,000, 3,000 years ago. It's a wide ditch enclosing the flat area, as you can see. There's a low circular platform. But unfortunately, the construction of the modern road, which is literally just there, has destroyed one of the banks in the ditch to the northwest together with the second entrance. And this is the northwest, this is it here, that's the main road that has destroyed one of the bits. Like Burr earthworks, 400 metres that way, it may have been the meeting place for a large prehistoric community. So as we walk just to the side here, you've got this flat plain, but then you've got the ditch to the side. Around about 2,000 years ago, 1,000 to 2,000 years BC. People were living and constructing things a spit's distance away from Penrith, or the Penrith that we know today. Now in there you've got Lowther Castle and Gardens, privately owned, now a holiday park. But what we're going to do, it's a little bit higgledy-piggledy, the history that we're going to be talking about round here. But it'll give you an idea of what you can come and see in the area. When we started this, we went into Appleby and I showcased you Appleby Castle. And Lady Anne, who had a lot to do with the resurrection of some of the castles in the area, she's connected to 4. She's connected with Appleby Castle, Broome Castle, Broome Castle that we're going to now, and also had a connection with Pendragon, which we will see later on. She was prolific in wanting to make sure that the properties were brought back to life before she took them. They were uninhabited, they were ruins, and she brought them back to life. Unfortunately, when she died, they went back into ruin again. But what you're just about to see is one of the most fabulous castles in the Eden Valley. And that is Broome Castle. Now as we look over this side and look over there, it had to be rebuilt after the storms of 2015. The water was so prolific and violent, it washed away part of this bridge that had stood for hundreds of years. In the far corner just over there, you can see a little bit. That's where the stream used to go, because there was a mill on that site there, over there in that field. But luckily, early this year, I was allowed access to Broome Castle. So let's go and have a look. Broome Castle. Recently discovered that we would have thought this river is doing the course that it's doing. Oh no, it wasn't. That is a man-made set of bricks or stones to divert the course of the river along here and to stop the erosion in the bank, because as you can see. But all this here was a massive great pond or lake that was put together when people occupied the castle. That castle now belongs to English Heritage, and we're going to go and see if we can have a look inside. There was a bridge there, medieval times, but in between the A66, you can just see the A66 bridge over there. In between there and this bridge, there was a Roman bridge. Other side of that river used to be Scotland, and Penrith, well, that was the first town in Scotland. Not that long ago, actually. So anyhow, let's go and have a look at Broome Castle. Looking totally and utterly splendid today. But also nearby, there's a Roman fort, which I knew nothing about, and I'm sure there's quite a lot of other people knew nothing about. But in early 1700s, the guy who owned this, who didn't really stay here, he took the roofs off and just put it into ruin, emptied all the contents out and put it into ruin. And over the years, of course, it's just got into a dilapidated state, which is now being protected by English heritage. But a lot of the stone used to build the castle was taken by the nearby Roman fort. And this is a mile away from the battle at Clifton at 1745. What a fantastic piece of architecture. And it's also associated with Broome Castle. And Broome Castle is where the Broome Castle ice cream place is. If you're not a member of English Heritage, I saw when I was coming in, I think it's about £6 for entry. And you can buy the guidebook of it all. That costs £3. Also, a woman by the name of Lady Anne Clifford was prominent in this area, and she owned 4 castles in Westmoreland. That was the old name for this area. At Appleby, Brough, Pendragon and Broome. Well, we've looked at Pendragon Castle before, and we've done Brough Castle. We've done Appleby Castle, and now we're doing Broome. Appleby was probably the main castle, but she moved around and occupied them at different times. This illustration shows Lady Anne Clifford being greeted by her steward on arrival at Broome on the 14th of October 1670. And on the right there, you've got members of her household. But she left here to return to Appleby in 1671, and Appleby Castle is very much prominent with Lady Anne Clifford, and it has one of the oldest keeps in Britain. So this is the castle of Roger Clifford, Lady Anne Clifford, Roger Clifford. In the late 14th century, Broome Castle was again an effective border defence. However, in August 1388, there was a Scottish invasion of northern England. In this illustration, we see a group of merchants who have arrived during the preparations for the castle's defence. And a lookout on the top of the keep has alerted knights in the courtyard to a possible attack by Scottish forces. Roger Clifford was responsible for much of the building work at Broome, including hall, kitchen and chapel. These were all on first floor level in a range of buildings which can be seen on the right. He died in 1388, and his building work was the last major change to the castle until the middle of the 17th century. So there we have Broome Castle, connected with Appleby, connected with Brough, and connected with Pendragon. But the story of Broome, it's just tremendous. We're heading back towards the A6 to head south, and we're going to go to an area whose story is disputed. There is another part that tries to claim the story, and that story is about Clifton. Clifton, a couple of miles south of Penrith, the last battle on English soil in 1745, and it's about the Scots retreating and English chasing them. Now, the reason for stopping here is here's a memorial to the Battle of Clifton Moor on the 18th of December 1745. Clifton Moor was a battlefield on the 18th of December 1745, the last time two armies clashed on English soil. It was here that the Duke of Cumberland's army caught up with Bonnie Prince Charlie's Highlanders on their retreat from Derby, of all places. The battle lasted around half an hour. And about a dozen men were killed on each side. The 45 Jacobite ended with the Battle of Culloden 4 months later, the Battle of Culloden being up in Northumberland. But so much is made of this battle lasting half an hour in December 1745. Now, for me, December's canny chilly, so perhaps they didn't have the blood coursing through the veins for a good scrap. And now what we're going to do is discover one of the best hidden stretches of water in the whole of the UK, in my humble opinion, in the whole of the UK. And this is what we've come to see. This is Hawes Water Reservoir. And these were the hills that we could see from right up on the top at Dunfell, but also as we looked over the top of Penrith. And 2018 has been an interesting year for weather, close to drought conditions, so you can see that the level is significantly down. But let's go and explore a bit further. Now, believe it or not, from this reservoir there are 400 million litres every day extracted to supply water to the northwest. And it is the largest dam in the northwest and one of the largest in the whole of Britain. But a fascinating fact is, even though there's 400 million litres of water every day that leave Hawes Water Reservoir, if you added up all the water it dispenses in a year, it still wouldn't add up to the amount of water that goes over Niagara Falls every 60 seconds. And you didn't know that now, did you? Would you like to go and have a look a bit further up? Oh, yes, Uncle Kev. Come on then. Let's do it. jaw-droppingly splendid. Situated 10 miles from Penrith, which is only 10 miles from the M6. Now this is the far end of Haweswater. Now there is another story. You see the island out there? Well, come this way a bit and there's a wall, parts of a wall there. Well, before Haweswater was filled, the village of Mardale, M-A-R-D-A-L-E, Mardale existed. And can you just imagine living in this valley? The life must have been unbelievably good. The views, the peace, the tranquility. Probably no good for a mobile phone or TV signal, but would you care? Because you've got your TV screen right there. But the residents of Mardale were relocated and Haweswater was filled. Now when it gets down, and it doesn't get down, I think it was 40, 50 years ago the last time it was down as far, or further actually, than this. But this year, 2018, it's gone down quite some distance and people have seen remnants of the village. And it's quite eerie. But you can just see how far the waterline is from where the waterline is now. And I was here earlier this year and I did some drone footage. So let's have a look. Million litres every day leave this reservoir, would you? Every day. I've got no perception how much that is. No perception whatsoever. 400 million bottles of water, litre bottles of water. That's a staggering amount. I just can't comprehend that, but they say that's what leaves every day. If Mardale was still a village that was lived in, I think it would be the most expensive property in the world. Because who wouldn't want to live in amongst that? As we head off to history. In a hidden building, it's got to make your toes curl. So as we leave Haweswater and retrace our steps, as I mentioned before, you've got to turn round at the end. Keep an eye open for this junction here, as it says towards Shap. And that is where you've just come from. Beautiful, isn't it? Just you wait. Just you wait. Now you can still see in the distance there where we've come from. So that's how close we are. How far is it? It's a hop, skip and jump from Haweswater. And a stone's throw from Shap itself. Concrete road. Why is it a concrete road? Answers on a postcard. So having left Haweswater, we're now here at Shap Abbey. Shap Abbey is located in a remote valley. Shap village is literally just over the little rise there. But it's in the valley, it's next to the River Lowther. But when King Henry VIII, his suppression of the abbeys and the eviction of its canons, it was handed to the governor of Carlisle in 1540, even though it was established in 1200, so it survived for over 300 years, located here. But there's something that I want to be able to show you that I've never seen anywhere else. A lot of the stone from the abbey was used in the surrounding buildings, but some of the monastic buildings that remained were used in the farm right there. But what I want to be able to show you is something I've never seen anywhere else. And I find it absolutely fascinating. And it's on the floor right there. This is one of the cloisters where the canons used to meet. And what happened was, some of them were interred within the abbey. And this is one of them. It's a stone coffin. It's only 2 strides long, but look at the width. They didn't have fast food back in those days, did they? The building at the end was built in 1500, so only 40 years before Henry VIII decided he was going to destroy them. And I'm sure you've heard the legend about he destroyed them because the head of the church wouldn't let him have a divorce. But why are abbeys in valleys and castles on hills? A lot of the abbeys run, or are built, not run, are built next to rivers. And right on the edge here, that's the River Lowther. Now we know they used to turn water into wine, but also sanitation purposes, and perhaps some of this water was blessed to become holy water. But it's not just here. Revo, across at Helmsley, that is also built next to a river. But castles aren't. However, Broome Castle is. Interesting. Just look at that view. And we head now to the village of Shap. Up on Dunfell, I mentioned that this area is synonymous with limestone. Well, there's 4 quarries within, I would guess, a 6-mile distance. You've got Shap Quarry up the top. Within Shap itself, you've got Tartar Steel. Then you've got Cemex. And then there's another one further down, I don't know the name of, but that's 3/4 quarries, all within 6 miles, all on the A6. So as we go through Shap, it really is a one-road town, but just up there you've got an open air heated swimming pool. So this is the road you would take to the M6. You'll see the brown sign saying Orton Village, and that's the one we're going to take. How about that for a view? Welcome to the Howgill Fells. And as we go just a little bit further, we can then say welcome to the Westmoreland Dales. This is all still within the Eden Valley. This is more or less the southern boundary of the Eden Valley at the Howgill Fells. But no less steeped in history. And there's the sign, Westmoreland Dales. They call it Yorkshire Dales National Park now, believe it or not, which has got absolutely, in my opinion, nought to do with the Yorkshire Dales at all. Just to the south side of Orton, and just before you see the signs in front, we're going to turn left and we're going to disappear off into the countryside. Now just down here on the right is a very small building. I think it's got to be the cutest building in the world. And that's Raisbeck Old School. That was a schoolhouse. So, a little while ago, all the children from around the local farms used to come here to go to school. And it's Raisbeck Dame School. It's not very big, is it? Let me stand in the corner. There is another level. And there you go. So that was Raisbeck School. Or is Raisbeck School, not was. Well, I guess it was a school, it isn't now. And then we take this left fork towards Aspey and Soulby. And we're going to turn right down here, because that's the way that we're going to go. Now what you can see in front of us here is Orton Scar, and it's all limestone rock. And legend has it that all round here was the floor of a tropical sea or a tropical ocean. And I've got a question. The ocean must have been like pea soup, because all limestone, they say, is formed from the shells of crustaceans from millennia ago. And then it was compacted through the force and all the rest of the stuff. But this whole area is littered with limestone rock, as well as the 4 quarries just over there that dig out the limestone. So the ocean must have been thick with crustaceans. Now as we trundle towards the base of the Howgill Fells, we're going to go through the little village of Ravenston Dale. Isn't that a fabulous